Hey guys, it is Spicy Sushi from the future. I decided to move how I do Rog Logbooks to the end of the video, and the crafting is at the front of the video. And I did this because I mainly get asked questions in the crafting. I don't really get asked at the logbooks as much, so feel free to skip there. Just keep in mind, it's not really for 2gen specifically. Like, the way I do logbooks for Rog is only for artifacts. I don't care about reroll currencies much at all, since I have way more than I need. So, but if you want that section, just skip to the end. But anyway, if you like crafting content, stuff like that, feel free to subscribe, ask questions, comment, come to Twitch and hang out if you have more questions too. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into the how to craft with Rog books themselves. So I'm going to go how I personally go about it and how I've personally found a lot of success with it in a league start scenario. Obviously, you craft with Rog a lot different later in a league, but this is how I found success with it at the start of a league. So basically, part one is going to be choosing your base. You don't have to be super picky at a league start. I know there's like item level limitations, like you're not going to roll T1 spell suppression if you don't have 86 item level 86 on like a chest or maybe a shield. I actually forget if it's 84 or 86, but you don't really need to care too much about that because number one, like Rog is not even guaranteed to give you T1 of that modifier that you want T1, like spell suppression. And number two, you might not even see the modifier. You might spend Rog might spend the entire time just wanting to divine your prefixes for no reason or remove your prefixes, sorry. And you might just never see it. So it's not really worth putting too much time and thought into the item level specifically. I would try to play on a higher level character because that is going to influence how often I believe higher item levels show up. And I believe maybe you can't even see 86 until like you're level 90 or something. So you do want to keep that in mind. Like, I would not be going into logbooks at like level 72 or something. I would try to get like at least level 80 and level up through logbooks like what I did last league. So there is that. So let's go ahead and go over bases that I like to roll with. Number one I like to do is shields, armor evasion, and evasion shields. And I would be picky about the base on these because you don't want to craft on armor too much because I feel like other things are a little bit better. So you would probably only want to do good bases. So you can actually go to Craft of Exile here and load up the emulator, create new item, and you can go to helmets. You can do this for all the armor too. And you can see that the three best evasion helmets are Lion Pelt, Center Tricorn, Silken Hood. You don't have to only go for these, but it does kind of give you like a guideline on how many artifacts you should spend on certain pieces. You're going to have way more scrap metal if you craft like me than artifacts, so I would be a little bit picky there. But it's not that big of a deal. And number two, my favorite thing is definitely rings when it comes to jewelry. I love crafting rings at Leaguestart. It is so much free money, it feels like. And then also belts. And actually, I don't really like amulets. I think belts are good at Leaguestart because people are just searching on trade for high resistances and high life, and belts kind of produce a lot of those at Leaguestart. Rings as well. With amulets, I don't have a good time with these because normally people are buying +1 amulets off of trade, which are like, it's really cheap if the only thing you want is +1. And I don't actually see that much, like getting +1 chaos on an amulet, +1 cold on an amulet, something like that. I crafted with Rog for like 5 days straight last league, and I did not see +1 once. But when I did a private league, I did see it right at the start of a league. And trust me, I have rerolled prefixes over and over, which is where you'd see this modifier, and I see it very rarely. I believe Rog used to show it more commonly, and then they balanced Rog in like some patch 3 patches ago or something. I'm pretty sure the line in the patch notes said like fixed an issue with the Rog where you were seeing like low weight modifiers more often, and so that was maybe where that came from. So I don't actually like amulets too much, I'm going to be honest. If I had artifacts, I would spend them on rings, and if it's the very start of a league, I would prefer rings and belts at the same weight. When it comes to armor, pure evasion or armor evasion, going for spell suppression, resistances life, and then shields are my favorite armor. So yeah, so for weapons, I do bows and claws. I have horrible luck with hitting anything else. I'm going to be honest, like there's going to be people that say, oh, I have a great time making caster weapons, like caster scepters, caster wands. Well, I have an absolute garbage time with that. I have tried for probably 3 leagues now to hit a single good caster weapon and have hit 0. I can't tell you how many times I have rerolled prefixes with 3 prefixes and have hit never even seen +1 spell or +1 fire, cold, chaos, whatever. Never happened, ever. and I have rerolled so many caster weapons. I think they are complete and utter bait from my experience, and I will never do them again. So that's kind of pretty much how it is. Pick your base. I would not worry about item level at all at this point in the league. People want anything that's good. And number 2 is going to be how to actually start crafting an item. So you can go through items and look for modifiers first. I think that is helpful, but a lot of the time, Rog will just simply delete those modifiers and reroll them, and so you can't really count on that too much, but you definitely can go for it. So like for right here, there is attack speed and fire resistance. Those are pretty good modifiers, so there is a chance that Rog could upgrade these, but I'm going to reroll them if he gives me the option. Because the number one thing that you want to do when you start with an item is you need to pick which side of the item you want to fill up the modifiers for. Because you don't want to create an item that has one open prefix and one open suffix. That is a horrible item because you're going to be missing a modifier. What you want to do is you want to have an item with 3 prefixes or 3 suffixes and 2 of the opposite. So if this shield has 3 suffixes, it needs 2 prefixes. If a ring has 3 suffixes, it needs 2 prefixes. If a bow has 3 prefixes, it needs 2 suffixes. That is how I go about it almost every time. Filling an item up with 6 modifiers is going to be such a horribly low chance that it's actually better than having a crafted modifier. So that is what I'm going with. What you want to do is you want to have one open spot to where you can bench craft a very good modifier that synergizes well with your item. And so that is pretty difficult if you're brand new to crafting or pretty new to Path of Exile in general, because you do need to have some knowledge here. And that's where Rog starts to become kind of overpowered in the hands of some players, because they have a lot of knowledge in the game, they have a lot of knowledge with crafting, and so they know exactly what side of an item they want to fill up and what side of the item is good to have a crafted mod. So I'll be pretty brief here on it, because there are definitely a lot of exceptions. Like, there are a large number of exceptions, but there aren't a large number of cases where there is an exception. So, for example, a shield is a bit more complex, because I think normally I would prefer to have 3 suffixes and 2 prefixes if I don't have life on the shield. Every single armor that you want either needs life or a spot to craft life. So normally when it comes to armor, I would fill up the suffixes as fast as possible, and I would try to reroll suffixes while keeping one open prefix. When it comes to basically all armor, especially boots, if you ever decide to craft on boots can be very annoying because you need 2 necessary modifiers on boots. You need life, you need movement speed. So by default, you need one open modifier, but also by default, at least one of your modifiers needs to be life and one of your modifiers needs to be movement speed on boots. So you have 2 necessary things, which makes boots pretty annoying with Rog, but very profitable if you do hit them. So on the shield, going off of what I just said, let's start with an armor piece, which is a shield. I want to fill the suffixes up as fast as possible and keep an open prefix. This is like a necessary requirement, but sometimes you aren't guaranteed to get what you want. But anyway, so I'll go ahead and show you here. So right here, Rog already wants to remove a single modifier with the lowest modifier level. Now, I have no reason to do this. We have not even started crafting it, so there literally is 0 benefit for me to remove modifiers. We have 3 full suffixes, which is what I said my goal was. My goal was to fill up my suffixes, and they're full. Rog is saying that he wants to remove a suffix. There is no benefit there. Sure, I'm fine with my suffixes being re-rolled, but I'm not fine with my suffixes being taken away from me, so I'm going to skip that. Now, Rog is saying that he wants to add a prefix. We have 1 prefix already. We don't want to fill up our prefixes. Like when Rog adds a prefix, we'll have 2 prefixes, so we'll be, so that's fine, right? I'm going to add a prefix. And now he wants to reroll prefixes, which is still fine. This is just basically changing our prefixes. It's going to keep the exact same number of prefixes. It's not going to be like a chaos orb. So we don't have to worry. There's no downside here, so I'd choose it. Now, Rog is saying he wants to add a prefix. And what I just said was that we don't want 6 modifiers, right? We have our 3 suffixes, we have our 2 prefixes. There is nothing else I want on this shield. I don't want another prefix, so I'm going to skip it. And now Rog is saying he wants to reroll the suffixes. So this is exactly what we wanted, right? We have our 2 prefixes, we have our 3 suffixes, we have an open spot for crafted life, and now we want Rog to reroll our suffixes to look for spell suppression. So there we got cold resistance, and we got T3 spell suppression, and T1 dex. Dex is not that crazy. Also, our prefixes are not that crazy. But, you know, this is exactly like the path that we wanted to happen here. And now Rog is saying that he wants to add a prefix. Now, you know, I'm going to repeat this again just so it's like hammered in. We have our 3 suffixes, we have our 2 prefixes. And like I said on armor, that's what I like to have because I can bench craft life. Now Rog is saying he wants to add a prefix. And when he does that, I'm going to have 6 mods. And I don't want 6 mods, right? So I'm going to skip that. And now we are on basically the end of the craft. So Rog is saying to reroll modifier values. All this is a divine orb. It's just going to reroll the values like a divine orb of the prefixes. Once Rog reaches this stage, it's usually over. Like there's usually nothing else you can actually do for your item at this point. You know, there might be a few more options, but usually when you see reroll modifier values, it's basically over. So I'm going to do this. You know, he sometimes gives an option after a reroll. So right here he did, but we don't want to do that, right? We don't want 3 prefixes. He wants to reroll 3 prefixes. This is actually pretty interesting. He only gave 1 divine orb option, which he usually gives a bunch. But this, since our prefixes are garbage, I'm going to take that, and we're still going to have an open prefix. So there we go. We actually hit T1 life, and we have an open prefix. So la 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 la. All right, I'd probably just craft something decent here. So since it's armor, since it's pure evasion, I don't know. I'd probably, you know, you could go for flat damage actually. You do want your item to look pretty on trade. Sorry, you may be like, oh, I'll just add, you know, keep it empty. They'll do it themselves, and you can never assume that for profit crafting. You should never assume that someone's gonna look up an item and be like, oh, it has an open modifier that I can add. Sure, that's you're like completely right when you say that, but you do need to still make the item look pretty, in my opinion. So I'd probably just add a bunch of flat evasion, and I would sell this early league. This would probably be a decent amount of money. Like, I don't know. It's actually pretty solid. So that is a success there. And now let's actually do another practice test, or another practice run for you guys. So we did a shield. Let's go ahead and do a ring. So you know how we went over like the requirements for an item when it comes to armor for me? Well, for rings, it's actually the same. I want 3 suffixes. I want 2 prefixes, because there is a absolutely required modifier for most rings when it comes to profit crafting. I guess I can't really find a ring. And it's this. The non-channeling skills have minus to total mana cost. If your ring has this, it automatically shoots to the moon up in value in a Leaguestart scenario. People love searching this modifier on trade rather than just searching if a ring has an open prefix. A lot of people do that. Like, they go to trade and like, oh, this has an open prefix. But if your item has this, it is like very appealing to a buyer on trade. And so that's why for rings, it is an absolute necessity for me to have an open prefix. Obviously, a ring is still very sellable if it has an open prefix, but you have to craft life. Like, if your ring just has no life but an open prefix, it's going to be more valuable to craft life unless you have energy shield. But I try to fill up the 3 suffixes with resistances and attributes, and then I try to have an open prefix, and ideally life is one of my 2 prefixes. So let's go ahead and go through the same thought process here. So he wants to remove all prefix modifiers. I see no benefit with doing that. There is a possibility if I skip here that he's going to add a prefix, and that kind of sucks. So honestly, I'm probably just going to do that at first. Yeah, there we go. He added a prefix. Like, there really wasn't any benefit to removing prefixes, but there's always the option that he's going to, like I said, add a prefix, and then we'd have 3 prefixes, which is exactly what I said I did not want. And obviously, you are still able to fix an item if you get 6 modifiers. Rog does offer the ability to remove mods sometimes in his crafts, but it may not be modifiers that you want to remove, so it can be highly detrimental in a lot of cases. Here we go, we added T2 life, added T1 ES. Now, I'm not going to do anything else with prefixes, right? Okay, so upgrade modifiers, you know there's nothing wrong taking that, rerolling. So he's rerolling the modifiers a lot. I feel like the craft is over now if he's doing this. If he's offering multiple reroll value, the craft is pretty much over. So yeah, there's nothing. I could have just taken the ring, to be honest, because usually when he starts to offer that, it's over. But anyway, So here we go. He actually, unfortunately, didn't offer us any options when it comes to rerolling suffixes, which sucks because this ring was looking pretty damn solid. It's got T1 life, T1 yes, but he didn't offer any suffix choices. But we got what I talked about, right? We have the open prefix for the non-channeling. It is 6 chaos, so if you don't want to craft it, don't feel bad. What you could do is actually just craft the lower tier of it. If you really don't want to, if you really don't have much chaos, you could go for like the alchemy orb one, and it would still show up on trade for people because they type in non-channeling skills and then select it, so it would show up. So you could do that. But yep, so that's pretty much done. I mean, it's a really solid ring, right? Like this is still a good ring, but it could have been an amazing ring. So I'll do one more example. It's a really long video, dude. Hopefully you guys are okay with that. So throat stabber, I said that was one of the mediocre bases, but it is still towards the top. So in a league start, what I would choose the shield. I would probably choose the stabber. I would probably not choose the boots because I honestly hate boots. I would probably choose the helmet. Twin claw. Okay, that's not the Gemini claw, but I guess to be honest, this is where Raw gets a bit more complicated. But if you're you do like, even if it's a mediocre base, you do kind of want to check if the modifiers on it are looking pretty juicy. And this claw has T2 flat fire, T6 wed, T3 life. Okay, that's not that juicy. That's pretty trash, but in a league start, it's pretty all right. This one's pretty juicy though. I normally don't really care for pure armor shields, but this one has triple elemental resistance, but it does have 3 prefixes, so we'd want to remove a prefix or reroll prefixes. I already said I don't want to go through armor again though. I want to show a weapon. So claw. All right, so weapons are really hard, but they are very good if you hit one. It's very hard to hit a good weapon, but oh man, like weapons are so expensive at Leaguestart. It's the main thing that people are buying is a weapon if they use a rare weapon, and so that's why you can make bank if you make good weapons. So what I want on a weapon though, I want 3 prefixes ideally, and I want 2 suffixes ideally. And that is like completely opposite to the 2 things that we did earlier. Because I want 3 solid elemental damage on my prefix. At the worst, I'd want 2 elemental damage and 1 elemental damage with attacks. Like basically 2 flat and 1 wed is still good, and 2 suffixes so I can benchcraft whatever I still need, because weapons typically need attack speed and they need crit. And if you have 3 suffixes and only one of them is crit or attack speed, you're kind of screwed. Like that's going to be a really garbage claw if the person doesn't even get crit or they don't even get like any attack speed. And also to combo that, a crafted prefix on weapons is garbage. Okay, it's usually horrible. So you usually don't want to be put in that situation. And now Rog is offering to reroll suffixes 10 times, which is worth taking. That's 10 rerolls. If he hits crit and attack speed, that's sick, right? And we hit absolute garbage, of course. I'm gonna select this because there's just no point. There's like no negative yet. Obviously, it's kind of a pointless option, and there's really no negative. So honestly, yeah, I could just skip this. But the problem is that it makes the next level 50% higher. But this is Grand Order artifacts, which are more expensive, so I'd probably just like skip. So here we go. Yeah, so it made the next cost 50% higher, but it's just Greater Order, so it's really not that much. I mean, this is like really minimal. You don't really have to care about min-maxing like that, but obviously, if the last choice is completely pointless, I'd probably skip if it was expensive. So here's a really good choice, rerolling suffixes. Well, obviously, we hit absolute garbage. Quality I'm to 20, pretty pointless, but there's no point in like skipping. Okay, so here's an option where we can remove a single modifier at the lowest level, so we can remove a suffix. This makes it so we have my original requirements, which is 2 suffixes. But the problem is that we have absolute garbage on our claw. Rog has given us absolutely nothing. It's looking completely doomed. So in this situation, I would be honest, I would just take the item and delete it, because there's no point in wasting artifacts on an item if Rog has not given you any hope of promise. Like if Rog has given you literally nothing, for like 3 or 4 choices, it's probably doomed. If your weapon looks like this, if your weapon looks like you just picked it up in Act 4 because you wanted to vendor it for an alteration orb, yeah, like it's pretty doomed, right? But I'll go ahead and continue to show what I mean. So let's go ahead and say that we went with it, right? Oh, okay, I just spent 10 of my big, okay, I spent 10 of, oh man, that was 9 of my exceptional order. Oh, we're re-rolling again. Oh, time to fill out right? Like, it's, okay, yeah. That's why I would normally stop. So, there's that. Now, that pretty much briefly cover, okay, I say briefly, this video just took like 18 minutes or something. I'm sorry about that. This went on forever. But that is like the reasoning that goes through my head when I'm making items with Rog, and that's why it's one of my favorite things to do at Leaguestart, because it's just way more, I don't know, it's way more involved than other Leaguestart strategies. It's way more fun for me, and that's why I like doing it. So you guys can obviously come to my Twitch and ask me any questions that you have, but I will see you tomorrow when I'm live, getting to Rog as fast as possible. See you guys. Hey, how's it going, guys? So I had to redo this part of the video because it was way too long compared to how exceptionally long the crafting part of this video is. So I do apologize. I did want to make this section, though, on how I run a Rog logbook, because that's the number 2 most asked thing that I get. The number 1 is obviously how I craft with Rog, but I do want to cover how I run a logbook with Rog. So this is just a regular logbook I opened. Early League, I do not care about the implicits, like, at all. I'll be honest, because I just buy whatever pops up on trade. I like to, if Order of the Chalice is like half the price of a Knights of the Sun, I will do it. This is, I actually have the Order of the Chalice in right now. But if Knights of the Sun is like around, like if it's like less than double the price, well, it depends on the chaos difference. If it's like 5 chaos more, I'll probably buy a Knights of the Sun logbook over a Order of the Chalice one any day of the week. I try to aim for 78 or higher. I believe item level affects the number of remnants, the number of runic monster markers. And I do believe for Knights of the Sun, you need an item level 80 or higher. And I believe for Rog, you want to do like 75 or higher. But I'll be honest, I usually try to aim for 78 or higher, because it's like usually not even a price difference. So yeah, so this is an Order of the Chalice in here right now, and I just want to go over the thought process of running a Order of the Chalice logbook or a Rog book. Okay, so number 1 thing to keep in mind is these are the most important thing here, because these drop artifacts. These don't drop the reroll currency, you know, the stuff that like rerolls the vendor window of a Expedition Master. These drop the currency that you use to craft with, and these are like 3 times more important, 4 times more important than a reroll currency, because with Early League on Rog, you barely need any reroll currency. You need a lot of artifacts, though. So these are priority over everything else. They drop from runic monsters, they drop from chests, like excavated chests, they drop from underground areas, they drop from the bosses. So we're trying to maximize items that are dropped, items that are from expedition chests, and you know, any kind of modifiers to quantity on the map. So like rolling your logbook, I try to aim for like 65% or higher Early League. And I try to aim for implicits. You know, I'm not picky at all about implicits, but if like when it comes to buying, but if my logbook has 3 Order of the Chalice, I'll choose the one of them that has a decent layout. I kind of forget right now exactly what decent layouts are. Maybe someone in chat in the comments can name them and I can pin your comment if you know like the good layouts. I know Vol Temple is the one that I always like to see. This is one of the worst ones in the entire game, the Rotting Temple. I hate this layout, but you know, if it was buying off trade, if it was my only option, I would take it. And then I aim for implicits that are like modifiers to quantity mainly. Runic monsters are good, but like mainly like explosives, number of explosives, explosive radius, quantity is going to be like quantity of artifacts is going to be most beneficial. And the number 2 most, okay, so number 1 is the artifact markers over everything else. Number 2, I would focus on the runic monster markers, the glowy skull with the stick, the big ones. And then I would focus on remnants that are really good. There is no point, in my opinion, of making your logbook, since these are 3rd priority, there's no point in making your logbook very hard when the gain is so tiny. Once I realized this, logbooks Early League became so much easier for me. For example, these are all garbage. Like, this is kind of why I kept this logbook open, is because immune to physical damage, if I'm playing Corrupting Fever, there's no point in getting this. And the only benefit is a chest has a 10% chance of spawning splinters. Absolute trash. This, also trash. literally 20% coal, and it's garbage. Monsters hits always critical strike, 10% Legion Splinter, awful. 10% enchanted item, awful. I mean, if I'm elemental element immunity, that's just free because that doesn't do anything. This is also pretty bad, and like 50% chance to drop an additional rare weapon. Maybe if I had like rares can drop with a fractured modifier, sure, but monsters applying curses on hit is awful. Like there's no point in why I would ever want to take that. And so I'm gonna ignore remnants like that. So for running the logbook itself, I see right here we have right here we have artifact markers and clumped up in the middle. Over here we have 4, which is pretty solid, pretty garbage, but you know, it's solid for what we're in right now. And over here we have underground areas. Now these are also a place where a lot of artifacts are going to spawn. I don't know the actual numbers, but I feel like it's going to be more beneficial to get 1, 2 artifact markers and these. Obviously, I would want all of these, but this layout is just trash. But these logbooks are usually so cheap, there's no point in you know, only going for good layouts. So I'm trying to get these monster markers because like I've decided, since these are what I want, normally I would look at the artifact markers and that would plan my entire path. But unfortunately, this layout, I can't really plan a path since I have so little flexibility here with the layout. But so I'm probably going to value these 2 underground areas over these 5 markers over here. If I could reach both, I would obviously get both. I would take whatever path I could get to get both, but I don't think we're going to be able to do that. So I'm going to zoom over here. I'm going to pick up as many monster markers and good remnants as I can think of. Like right here at a league start, if I'm not elemental element immune, these are all so garbage for no gain. So I'm going to ignore them. I'm going to make sure these monsters are not hard. Monsters are duplicated. This is, you know, this is actually very rare, so I don't think I need to cover it very much. If you get this, it is a lot of times a good idea to maybe like try to path to get it at the beginning, since if you get it earlier, it benefits everything. And you know, but since it wouldn't really change my layout that much, obviously you can always use your hotkey to you know, Shift D is mine to undo, but I'm not going to worry about it since I'm probably not even going to get much out of this layout anyway. Obviously, if you're doing a book with Danig, I would probably try to min-max reroll currency drops because it's Danig currency. It's very valuable. But for this Order of the Chalice book, the reroll currency is not really that big of a deal. So, not going to worry about it. So I can actually maybe make it to the markers that I wanted. So I got that. And then... ooh, quantity. This is actually kind of annoying. +5 max res and 30%. This is why chaos builds are really, really good at logbooks, is because you can completely ignore stuff like this. The only modifier that's bad for you is immune to chaos, right? And technically spell block. Unfortunately, this is the only time that we ever actually found a quantity of artifacts found in chests. This is a really good remnant, but it's unfortunately at the very end where it has no value for us. And right here, artifact dropped by enemies, artifact drops by chest. These are the ones that you want. You really want these. I guess if I were to try again, I would maybe try to get, like, what I would do is I would go to the middle and then go, or actually just go straight to the left, grab this, and maybe wrap around to try to have those modifiers affect the whole logbook. But I would also be not getting this anymore. You know, so it's just a bad layout issue right here. And you don't want to put too much thought into it. You really don't. If you use the general rules that I told you, where you aim for artifact markers, #1 above everything else, and make that decide your entire path, and hopefully underground areas are in that path already. You don't want to you don't want to go all the way to Australia to get, you know, underground areas if you know, you don't want to go all the way to Australia to get underground areas if there's no artifact markers over there. And usually you don't have to make that decision because you usually don't have a horrible layout. But yeah, that's it for how I run the logbook. I'm not going to actually do it because we got to get to the crafting part of the video, which takes up a long time. So let's go ahead and go to that.